In this video, I'm going to talk about bridges that I think, in my opinion, should be built. And first, we're going to start off with my area once Google Maps decides to load, and just talk about this tip of the Rockaways, which I think Breezy Point probably should have some kind of connection either into Brooklyn or potentially even into Staten Island. I get that obviously a connection into Brooklyn is a lot more feasible than a connection into Staten Island. You can connect Breezy Point to Brighton Beach, and it would pretty much be around the same as the Marine Parkway Bridge, except that, at least in this case, it's further out and would provide direct access to Coney Island. But I could see how that could be a technicality. Staten Island, I think, should also be built, but again, it's a pretty long distance from Breezy Point out to Midland Beach, and there is an argument against it because of all the maritime traffic that passes under it, how high the bridge would have to be, and how expensive it would be. From Breezy Point to somewhere like Brighton Beach, as of now, the car ride is 15 minutes. It could be a lot longer when the traffic on the Belt Parkway is horrendous, and it's just mildly out of your way. But for somewhere like Midland Beach, which is in Staten Island, to get there, it's a lot. And to get somewhere like from there, it's as of now 29 minutes. And again, when traffic on the Verrazano Bridge and Belt Parkway is horrible, it can be a lot longer than that. Trust me, you don't know how bad traffic in this area can get. So I feel like that could be a good interstate connection. Again, be careful with New York City because, again, just because you can build a connection doesn't always mean that you should. Like, for example, I don't think that we should have a connection from this rural area of New Jersey into Brooklyn. I don't think it's feasible to build it. I'm not insane. I know that the traffic is horrendous, but there are still trains that can get you there. So I'm not going to be, too unreasonable. But I feel like between the George Washington Bridge down here and the Mario Cuomo Bridge up here, somewhere in between, there should probably be some kind of bridge between New York and New Jersey. Or between, Rockland and whatever, but really between New York and New Jersey further north than the George Washington. Because as of now, if you're trying to go from like Yonkers to Alpine, your options on either side are relatively crappy. Relatively crappy on both sides. Okay, not saying there's any plans for this to be built. This is more so like my ideas as to where to do it. But as of now, yeah, it's a 27-minute drive, and you have to go all the way down NY9A into I-95 on a GWA bridge, and then take the Palisades Parkway up. And the traffic could make it a lot worse. As for some other places that I think could use a bridge, and again, I'm trying my best not to be unreasonable here. Obviously, building one across the Chesapeake Bridge when you don't have, that is a little bit unreasonable. Also, Cape May to Lewis does go on US Route 9, but again, I'm a little bit iffy if you should really be building a bridge across the heart of the Delaware Bay right as it goes into the ocean. I get that Louise to Cape May, your road options are, again, really crappy. Really crappy from Louise to Cape May. If you're, like, in the southern area of New Jersey, you really have to take a ferry, not just to get to Delaware, but really anywhere in the Delmarva Peninsula. But, again, look at how long the ferry is. The ferry is 16 miles. Building a bridge would probably also be about 16 miles. It's probably not the most feasible thing to do, even though the connection is long and slow. And that's also why, like, for the Long Island Sound, I think that building a bridge across the Long Island Sound may not be the most feasible. You have some ferries, and I think the ferry service is crappy and inconsistent, and I do think that it would help to dilute the traffic flow in New York City, but I also think that building a bridge across the Long Island Sound could be very expensive, and so while I think you probably could have a connection at some point, I'm just not sure where it would be and how it would work, which is why, again, I'm not going to immediately jump to suggest this as an idea. And building one from Montauk to New Shore on Rhode Island on Block Island to mainland Rhode Island, not a practical option, both due to how long it is and due to the fact that Block Island doesn't even allow for cars anyway. So that would be a problem. As you go through the country, there are some places where, again, it could make sense to have a bridge, like one across Lake Erie that would connect Canada to the U.S. because as of now, if you want to go from somewhere like St. Thomas to somewhere like Cleveland, again, what could just be a bridge across Lake Erie is instead, a very, very long drive. It's 4 hours if you're going through Michigan and 5 hours if you're going through New York. And either way, you have to get through somewhere. And there is this 6 hour route that does involve a ferry at Pele Island, but that only goes to Sandusky. There's no connection to Cleveland. From Sandusky to Cleveland, you still got to take some state routes until you can finally connect onto I-90. So I think that could be a place where maybe it's worth it to have a connection, but again, building one over Lake Erie is probably very costly. Same problem exists really over any of the Great Lakes. Lake Michigan, again, people have wanted to build a bridge from Chicago to Michigan or maybe even Milwaukee to Michigan because, again, as of right now, it's either south through Indiana or all the way through the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. But, again, cost probably makes it too, ineffective. But what I think really does need to be a bridge is a direct connection from Missouri to Kentucky because these are the only two states that border each other that don't have a connection. What if you want to go from East Prairie in Missouri to Bardwell in Kentucky? What if you wanted to go between these two roads right here? You'd have to go north into Cairo, Illinois, along US 60 and 62. And the next closest bridge in the southwards direction is all the way down here at Interstate 155 on the Carthersville Bridge, which isn't even that far north in Tennessee. There's no direct access to the Kentucky Bend region, so it's very difficult to get to, from the rest of the area, and this is an enclave of Kentucky, and I feel like Kentucky at some point should connect to Missouri. Not sure where exactly build a bridge, because, again, this area is poor, and the roads here aren't great, but certainly one point could be where there's a ferry between Dorena and Hickman. Again, as of now, you have to take a ferry to get between the two of them, and this is a point on the Mississippi River where, again, you could easily have a bridge. I mean, it's just the Mississippi River. And for length, again, I have cited cost, but I do want to point out that the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge, does exist. So we do have super long bridges across the U.S. at points, like, again, over Lake Pontchartrain, because this bridge is massive. So one, over the Great Lakes or over the Long Island Sound, even though it's a bit impractical, is possible. And again, another one I want to point out is maybe somewhere, it's from Sandy Hook, New Jersey, in that region, all the way up to somewhere like Brighton Beach, because again, as of now, you have to go really far out of your way to make that connection. And in New York City rush hour traffic, it's absolute hell. So from Sandy Hook Beach, again, to Brighton Beach in Brooklyn. As of now, it's a very long and inefficient drive. It's an hour, 17 minutes, and it's 52 miles, so really, at best, it's going to be a 50-minute drive. And again, could you build a connection? Yes, although, to be fair, you can't have a bridge from there and then also have one from Queens to Staten Island. That wouldn't work out. You can't have two bridges in that same area unless it's like some really crazy interchange kind of thing. And again, not going to go overboard with suggesting bridges. There's probably a few others you could build in Seattle to connect further west, so you don't have to go all the way down to Tacoma to connect to the western peninsula of Washington. So I think that this area could use a bridge. And again, I'm less familiar with this as you go further. I feel like, Astoria has a bridge into Washington, and Astoria is a bridge into Washington on Route 101, and then from Portland to Vancouver it has one along the I-5. And between them, Yes, there is one from Longview to Vania, but I feel like there should be better connections for crossing the Columbia River. And again, there's not really a whole lot of connections because then you have to go all the way out to Hood River for the next connection on the Hood River Bridge, which would connect you into White Sound and Washington. There are huge areas in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area where, again, it's just very hard to get between the two. And I almost went to the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area where, again, the connections just can get very inefficient. The Dalles and Dallesport have another bridge on US Route 197, but again, crossings over the Columbia River probably could be a bit more plentiful, given how long the Columbia River is. And again, say that you want to get from somewhere like Cascade Locks in Oregon out to Stevenson in Washington. There is a bridge of the gods, but I'm pretty sure it's walk only. So to actually get, from the two, oh wait, you can drive between the two of them. I thought you can only walk between the two of them. And some of the walk is a day, but we're not focused on walking. We're focused on driving. And again, I just feel like the connection on the Cascadia River, I mean, I get that this makes it better to have that bridge between the two of them, so maybe it's fine. But could there be better connections? I personally think that you could have better connections across that, across that region. And there's some Channel Islands off of California that, again, maybe could be worth connecting. I'm not sure how far they are, but maybe they are worth connecting because I mean, I know that they're closer, but the Barrier Islands off of Long Island are still connected to the mainland. And that's mostly it. Again, there aren't a whole lot of places where there's an obvious hole, and a lot of them are meant to be this way. And no, I'm not talking about Alaska into Russia as a whole, because that would be a whole other thing to actually build a connection from North America to Asia. It's not just building the bridge from Alaska to Russia.